A year ago, Alex Eala held 4 match points in the biggest final of her career. She lost every single one of them. The defeat hurt so much that for months afterward, she couldn't even bring herself to watch the replay. Now imagine tennis handing her a second shot, the same opponent, on the sport's most famous stage, with an entire country roaring her name from the stands. Imagine a 21-year-old walking onto a court in London, where the atmosphere sounds nothing like a typical Wimbledon crowd. By the end of this story, you'll understand why people watching from Court 12 were wiping away tears. To understand why this run means so much, you have to start in Manila. Tennis has never been a headline sport in the Philippines. Basketball fills the streets, boxing fills the arenas, and beauty pageants fill the TV specials, while tennis has historically struggled to register at all. Still, somewhere in that unlikely environment, Eala picked up a racket early enough for it to matter. She was eventually sent to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain, working alongside players who'd grown up with every advantage tennis-mad countries could offer, advantages she'd had to chase from scratch. Fast forward to this year's Wimbledon draw, and that same kid from Manila was seeded 29th, the first Filipina in history to earn a seed at the tournament. Being seeded was one milestone. Making it through the draw would be something else entirely. Her first-round match landed on Court 12, not center court, not one of the show courts with cameras trained on celebrities in the crowd, but the kind of side court where opening round matches usually finish quietly and get forgotten by lunch. This one didn't. Her opponent, Mexico's Renata Zarazúa, is a gritty competitor who doesn't give matches away easily. Eala didn't just beat her, she dismantled her. 6-1, 6-2, striking 22 winners, winning 16 of 21 trips to the net, and facing only 2 break points the entire match, both of which she saved. To anyone who follows tennis, those numbers don't describe a lucky day. They describe complete control. What most people watching didn't realize is that this performance wasn't a surprise, it was the payoff of weeks of quiet preparation nobody outside the sport had been tracking. Right before Wimbledon, Eala had already won the Birmingham Open, her second WTA 125 title, on grass, beating specialists on their best surface. She then reached the semi-finals in Berlin, beating 2 top 10 opponents back-to-back along the way. In between, she sharpened her net game in doubles at the Bad Homburg Open, sharing the court with 5-time Wimbledon singles champion Venus Williams. By the time she stepped onto Court 12, grass wasn't a surface she was still figuring out. She'd already solved it. Grass punishes hesitation. The ball skids low, points end fast, and there's little time to think your way out of trouble the way clay allows. Most players spend years just learning to survive on it. Eala had quietly built the low center of gravity and quick footwork needed to stay balanced through those skidding bounces, turning what should have been her weakest surface into a genuine weapon. But by the time she walked off court, the tennis itself wasn't the biggest story. The crowd was. Packed around Court 12 was a sea of Filipino flags, dozens of fans, many from the UK's Filipino diaspora, some of whom had reportedly queued since before sunrise and slept outside overnight for a first-round match on a side court. When Eala finished, they didn't offer the polite, restrained applause Wimbledon is known for. They swarmed the railings, draped a flag over her shoulders, and chanted her name until it stopped sounding like a name and started sounding like a chant. Commentator Martina Navratilova, who has covered this tournament for decades, remarked live on air that she'd never seen a side court feel less like a neutral venue and more like a genuine home match in England, no less. Clips of the celebration spread across social media within hours, racking up millions of views and pulling in viewers who'd never watched a tennis match in their lives, all asking who this player was. Captions got translated and reshared across time zones, and outlets that normally only cover the show court scrambled to put together reaction pieces. Commentators who had been calling Wimbledon matches for decades said on air that they couldn't remember a side court atmosphere anywhere close to this one. If that had been the emotional high point of the tournament, it still wouldn't have been the whole story because round 2 was already waiting, and it came loaded with history. Eala's second-round opponent was Australia's Maya Joint, a name that might not mean much to a casual fan, but meant everything to Eala. Exactly 1 year earlier, the two had met in the Eastbourne final, where Eala held 4 match points and converted none of them, eventually losing a third-set tiebreak 12-10. Losses like that don't fade quickly, she said openly that it hurt enough that she avoided watching the highlights for months afterward. Now the draw had put Joint directly back in front of her at Wimbledon, in a night match, with her home crowd watching. Joint, for her part, wasn't arriving quietly either. She'd just pulled off one of the tournament's biggest upsets, beating 7-time champion Serena Williams in 3 sets. The first set played out like an old wound reopening. Joint broke early and closed it out in roughly half an hour, 6-3, and for a moment it looked like the Eastbourne script might repeat itself. Then the match turned. Eala broke back early in the second set, reeled off 3 straight games, and leveled things at 6-2. The deciding set became a war of nerves, 6 deuces, both players refusing to give an inch until Eala finally pulled away and closed it out with a 6-0 bagel, slamming the door on the set, the match, and a year-old memory in one motion. Afterward, she didn't hide how much the Eastbourne defeat had stung, or how much extra motivation it gave her walking into the rematch, while still crediting Joint for her win over Serena Williams days earlier. That set up round 3, a meeting with defending champion IgaSwiatek, one of the most dominant players of this era, and a rival Eala already has history with. She upset Świątek at the Miami Open the year before, and Świątek returned the favor in Madrid 1-1 apiece. No clear edge either way. Świątek has since acknowledged she doesn't have a full picture of Eala's grass court game, but knows exactly how disruptive her ability to shift rhythm mid-match can be for an opponent. That's not a throwaway comment. That's a champion admitting real uncertainty about what she's walking into, even as she carries the extra weight every defending champion drags through a draw target every remaining player in the field is trying to hit. There's also a quieter storyline running underneath the Świątek matchup that's easy to miss. Defending champions carry a weight that has nothing to do with their opponent's ranking. Every single player left in the draw is specifically hunting for the win that ends their title defense. Add an opponent who's already beaten you once, who just produced the most talked-about comeback of the tournament, and who's carrying an entire fan base capable of turning a side court into a coronation, and it's not a comfortable draw for anyone, champion or not. Step back from the scoreboard, though, and there's a bigger story here than one player's run. For decades, top-level tennis has largely been the domain of Europe, North America, and Australia, a sport that rarely opened its doors to countries better known for other games entirely. A Filipina being seeded at Wimbledon, then winning a main draw match there for the first time in her country's history, then beating the opponent who broke her heart a year earlier, and now standing 2 wins from the second week, that's more than a good tournament. It's the kind of run that puts a racket in the hands of kids across the Philippines who, for the first time, are seeing someone who looks like them, speaks like them, and carries their flag onto the biggest stage the sport has to offer. Win or lose against Świątek, something has already shifted that won't reverse. A country that never really claimed tennis as its own has found a reason to. And it happened because a 21-year-old refused to let one brutal loss in Eastbourne define her, refused to be intimidated by a forgotten side court, and refused to shrink against the biggest names the sport has to offer. Consider the full arc. A kid from Manila, with no grass court tradition and no lineage of national champions to draw from, sent overseas as a teenager to train among players with every built-in advantage. She comes home not just competent, but dangerous, climbing into the world's top 30, earning a seed at the tournament most protective of its own traditions, turning a forgotten side court match into a spectacle, and erasing the memory of a heartbreaking final with a 6-0 set in the biggest possible spotlight. Now she's 1 win away from doing something no Filipino has done at this tournament in the modern era, against a defending champion who's already admitted, on the record, that she's not entirely sure how to prepare for her. Any one of those milestones would make a solid story on its own. Stacked together, they start to look like history being written in real time, the kind of run that gets replayed in highlight compilations long after this fortnight's prize money and ranking points are forgotten. So here's where the story lands, back where it started. What happens when the woman who lost 4 match points gets a second chance against the same opponent, on the same enormous stage, with a nation chanting her name? She didn't just get her redemption, she earned it, point by point, until the scoreboard read 6-0 in her favor, and the crowd erupted like they'd seen something they'd remember for years. And the story isn't finished yet. Saturday brings a defending champion, more flags, and more history waiting to be written on a lawn that's watched over a century of champions come and go, and has never quite seen anything like this. What do you think happens on Saturday? Drop your prediction below, and stick around, because the moment that match ends, we'll be back to break down exactly how it went, point by point.